probably have trouble naming this video because it's a bunch of different ideas about how software or how human thinking works, or when it works efficiently, or can do great things, or when a software or set of algorithms or or a flow or procedure in a system, like in a court system or in an economic system or in a piece of operating system, when it works well and when it doesn't, when things go wrong in an economic system, what factors, what things contribute to when things are clogged up and they don't function the way they were supposed to function. Well, I listen to a lot of financial commentators, and many of them they worry that when all this money that's printed or injected into the economic system, it will create runaway inflation, and this is similar to the ideas that I want to go after, but I'm not simply looking at the economic system or a monetary system. I'm looking at many different systems. When they become corrupted and they don't work right, what factors cause these problems? Let's start with the system that is right in our face, which is the monetary system, and why many people think that it's going to become, has to be reset. Well, if we think of the monetary system as like a representation of the information flow in society, or when a person has a product to sell and there is another person comes along and buys that product at a price that they both agree upon, this process, this give and take, is a form of information. Actually, what's happening in that the monetary system, in that economic system, is that these two participants, they're creating valid information. Well, by the word valid, I mean that when a factory produces a worthwhile product, something that society wants, and then the society or the factory, they come up with the price that they both think this product should be traded in, this is valid information. This is information that's based on what else is going on in society, or whatever else that could be going on. For example, in this same society, if next day there is a product that's very similar to this one is developed, and it costs like 1/100th of time cheaper than the one the factory produced yesterday, then this new information and the collapse in the price that this product is traded in, this changes the system, because this is information and it's valid information, and society accepted that, hey, this is valid, and they traded this product in that sense. So when in this same economic or monetary system there is a central agent like the, say, the Fed or Bank of England, and they inject money, okay, that's supposed to be, has a trading value or be unit of account into the system, that's just a value that just comes in, but it wasn't based on valid information. The valid information would be that somebody made this product and the society also thought the product was valuable, so then the trading was done. But this other information, which is just the money that's injected into the system, that's like noise. That's like false information. That's information that it doesn't do anything to get this system maintained. Well, there are studies, for example, in communication theory, Shannon's. Well, I haven't really studied Shannon very well, but I've read about his ideas from other authors. Well, in a communication between two parties, if there is some noise, well then what the valid system would do would retransmit this information, or there is a double check, parity check, to make sure every bit of the information was transmitted correctly. But if in a communication system there is too much noise, too many information is coming that has nothing to do with the valid information that was in the system, then the would be like when you're tuning in a radio station, and the radio signal or the announcer comes on, there is it becomes choppy, and you hear some of the stuff, it makes sense, but then there is between all the stuff, there's all this garbled stuff, or some other transmitting station is breaking in, and there is some other information that's going on. Well, this is exactly what happens to monetary system. And with the U.S. monetary system, with the dollar, there is so much is coming in that is irrelevant to economic processes that must be going on in the society, that this signal is completely corrupted, or is almost unrecognizable. Some of the stuff that's irrelevant to economic processes is all the money that's assigned to military ventures and military expenditures. This is just like there is no return on investment. There is no money that you would get back plus the principal with all the money that was spent. So a lot of the jobs, or a lot of the jobs of the future, will be in enforcement, in military ventures, or producing military goods, or paying the soldiers, or maintaining status quo. Well, this is all money that's completely lost. Then another problem with this economic system is that there are all these structures that were built up, all these government, huge government, and all these branches and employees, and they suck up all the resources. So this is also economic process that's irrelevant to valid economic transactions. Well, a lot of analysts, they know about this, and they talk about it. Peter Schiff talks about it, but also he ignores the fact that there is a lot of collapse in prices of goods because of technologically induced deflation, and that's also valid information. If, for example, I use a kind of anecdotal example. When the Clintons were on, and there were all these issues with Iran, Miss Clinton came out and said that, well, we need to make a virtual embassy in Iran, which means like having a website that can do all the functions of a regular embassy. Well, then this brings out another issue, that the the conferencing technology and file transfer and verification of documents, these have all become encoded into internet. And really in the past, if a country wanted to have an embassy somewhere, they would have to get the land and the buildings and the employees and diplomats. Everything cost money. But then when all this stuff migrated into the internet, and you can do this like almost a fraction of the cost of having an actual embassy. Well, you get where I'm going with these ideas is that many systems, they can be transported, become virtual, and the cost, which is the capital that was spent on those systems, it kind of reduces. This is a kind of deflation or collapse in prices. So what I saw, I was going to cash a check, but actually I was buying a money order. I saw that they had these machines in the check cashing places that you could cash your check, even personal check, by writing the check and dropping it into the slot, and the machine would copy the check and would verify, do all the functions that the clerk would have to do. It was all automated, and well, it didn't like my personal check, but I think that the idea is there. So you can extend this to many systems, and really when these technological changes come about, these are huge deflationary collapses that happen everywhere. Well, actually, when you are boiling water, the temperature gradually rises, and it does come to 100 degrees centigrade. But then at some point inside the water, on the bottom of the pan, there are some regions, like there is some discontinuity, there is some particle, and these are where the water vapor molecules form, because in those areas there is like extra energy, extra radicals. But this happens in an economic system because of all these collapses in different areas. Like I mentioned 2-3 of them, but then this has happened in other areas too. For example, if the technology for self-driving cars become significant, which there are some cars right now on the road that are totally self-driving, then the entire sector of trucking could collapse. All the capital or money that was allocated to paying the truck drivers, it could collapse to zero. This is this is massive deflation. In fact, that's a huge part of the U.S. economy. Well, then I mentioned the collapse in price for administrative functions like having an embassy, but that this can be extended to other white-collar jobs. These collapses, they are just like the water on the bottom of the pan, that at some points or in many points on the bottom of the pan, there are regions where water vapor is easily formed, and it actually becomes, it bubbles. And what I'm saying is that economic systems or monetary systems are not different than any system. Just like you're boiling water, the ideas or the mathematics of it is quite similar. I had another video on that the shock waves on projectiles moving into a medium. Say you have a shock wave formed in front of a hypersonic rocket. Well, the math that governs the region of the flow that's outside of the shock wave, and then when it comes to the envelope of the shock wave, this math, okay, if you subtract the math from the physical processes, this math is similar to what happens when shady companies form and they lie about their fundamentals. And it's like a flow that hasn't hit the fan. To basically, this the math does describe this when these companies form, they prosper, their stock prices bloom, and then they collapse because the investors figure out, hey, this company is BS. There is no profits. There is no fundamentals. It's the similar math when the flow comes in and it's close to the body of the projectile, and shock wave forms. Outside of the shock wave, the speed and temperature are very different than inside the envelope of the shock wave, where the flow has to stop at the boundary of the projectile. Well, the math is not extraordinarily more difficult than well, actually what I think what happens is that the economists and the fluid mechanics or quantum physicists, they all discover the same mathematics, but they're studying completely different processes. Well, what I'm saying is that this is similar to what happens in communication theory when the correct information is it becomes garbled to a point where the false information is what the system believes in. Well, this comparing the different math that comes out of these different systems, well, it kind of points that many of these processes are really similar, and the mathematics is also very similar. Usually what happens when mathematicians, they don't recognize a set of equations is because one group developed these equations that had their own symbols, and then another group develops it for another process and they have their own symbols, and you have to kind of look at the equations and see, hey, this is the same equation. The symbols are different, but I could kind of unify them, come up with a universal information. Well, the ideas behind valid information versus false information, they kind of point in the direction of how a system might fall apart. Well, I want to kind of end here because these ideas are getting very complex. I don't want to lose a few remaining audience I have. Thank you very much for being my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and leave your comment.